Today we're going to be replacing the transfer case fluid, the rear differential fluid, and the rear differential clutch fluid on a 2018 Buick Enclave. Now if you've never done this before, all three of those components do use a different fluid. I'll make sure to give you the part numbers that GM specs for each one of those to make sure you're getting the right one. In addition, I'll show you every step, including the torque specs on the drain and fill plugs, to make sure you do this job the correct way. Moving on to some of the things you need here. So you need a drain pan, one of these fluid pumps to go into these quarts in order to get the fluid up into the transfer case and the rear differential. I am going to be using a separate one for this other fluid here just so I don't mix these up. You can obviously use the same one. Just make sure you thoroughly clean it out before you switch over to these fluids. In regard to the transfer case, it's going to be this 7590, and this is going to be the synthetic version, and there's the GM part number. I'll give you a close-up of all the part numbers here. When you go onto the rear differential, it's going to be a different one. It gives a 7590, and it's going to be the limited slip version. So the limited slip goes in the rear differential. The regular synthetic 7590 goes in the transfer case. These aren't the same fluids. Then you also need to change the rear clutch fluid, and it's going to be this Pentosin CHF 11S. Recently, in the last year or so, they did relabel it to say Titan, but it still is the same fluid. One other comment on the rear differential, there are two different versions. From 2018 to 2020, there was the G99 twin clutch that was only used in the higher end models. So on the Enclave, it was only available on the Premium and the Avenir, and on the Traverse, only in the High Country. If you don't have one of those models, you have the standard all-wheel drive, and likewise all 21 and newer, the G99 was dropped, and they all have the standard all-wheel drive as well. With that said, both differentials use the same fluid, and I'll give you a side-by-side comparison as they both also use the same drain and fill plugs. Then the last couple of things here, the drain plugs, GM doesn't really call for these to be replaced, so you can reuse them. I have a couple here, so I'm just going to be, replacing them, but you need to make sure you get a 10 mil hex for the transfer case and the rear differential. And if you're going to be doing this clutch fluid, it's going to be a smaller one here, and this is just going to be a 5 mil hex. So you need to make sure you get both of these in order to get those plugs removed as well. Alright, so starting with the transfer case, so here is our drain, and here's our fill plug. Depending on which tool you're going to be using here, you may or may not have access to get in there. So as you can see, ours is just a little bit longer. So we're going to remove this support part, and you just got a 15 mil here, and one on the other side as well. Before we get in here and try to open up this fill plug or the drain here, just make sure you take something in there and scrape any corrosion you have in there so you can make sure you can get your hex in there all the way, because if you don't do this, what sometimes will happen is you won't get it in all the way and your risk stripping it out. So just clean it out first, and after you get it cleaned out, then we'll first loosen up this top one. And we'll go down here and we'll open up this one as well, and we'll have our drain pan ready here. Then we'll just let that drain here for a couple minutes, and this is a good time to inspect the end of this just to make sure you don't have any excessive metal shavings. Ours looks fine here, so if you're going to reuse this, just make sure you clean this off. Then we'll just let that drain here for a couple minutes. And after that becomes a slow trickle, clean this up a little bit here. Then we'll thread our plug back on here. Just make sure that gasket or that seal is on there as well. Then you're going to tighten this up to 29 foot-pounds. Alright, so there's the 29. Then go back up top here and we're going to remove that fill plug all the way. Now we're ready to fill up the transfer case. So again, just make sure you're putting the right fluid in there that I talked about earlier. And we do have our gear pump in here as well, so we'll go ahead and we'll tighten that down. And if you're using an older one like I have here where you've used this before, just make sure you flush this out a little bit. So all you got to do is just do a couple pumps into your drain pan over there. Just make sure anything left in here is not getting pumped into your transfer case. After you've done that a couple times, then we'll go back under the vehicle and we'll get this filled up. Alright, so go ahead and insert this in the top here, and then we'll begin the process of pumping this fluid in here. And it's going to take about 0.9 quarts, but really what you're looking for is a slow trickle to come out of here. And very important, make sure this vehicle is level, because if it's not level, you're going to put the wrong amount of fluid in here. So we'll continue the process here until we get it to slowly come out of the top there. Alright, we can see that we're starting to get just a little bit to come out there. So that should be good. So we'll go ahead and clean that up. Then we'll put our fill plug back on there as well. Then we'll torque that to 29 foot-pounds as well. Alright, so after you get that to 29 foot-pounds, just make sure you clean up anything else here. And we'll go ahead and we'll put this support bar back on here as well. Alright, so after you get that tightened back up, then we're done with the transfer case. Moving on to the rear differential. So on the driver's side, here's going to be the drain and here's the fill for the rear axle. For the differential clutch, here's going to be the drain and then the fills over here. So we'll start over here with axle. So again, make sure you clean up both of those holes in there so there's no corrosion. Then we'll put our 10 mil in there and we'll loosen those up. And as you can see right there, I can't get that in there. So what sometimes people have the tendency to do is get a smaller size and they strip it out. So just keep cleaning that out until you can get that 10 mil hex to fit in there cleanly. Alright, so there we can feel that it's fully seated in there. So we'll loosen up this first. Then we'll remove the drain plug here on the bottom and let this drain out. And just make sure you have your drain pan ready here. And we'll give that a couple minutes there to completely drain out. And again, I'm going to be using a new plug here, but just make sure on your old one to make sure you clean up all of this stuff on the end here and just check for any excessive metal shavings. If it looks fine, then you should be good. Then when that's done draining, we'll clean this up a little bit here. And we'll tighten this back up, and again, make sure that seal is on there as well. Then we'll tighten this up to 29 foot-pounds. Alright, so there's the 29. Then we'll go ahead and remove this fill plug. Then to fill the rear axle up, again, there's the part number you're going to be using. So we got our pump in here already, so we'll tighten this back down. Then we'll go back onto the vehicle and we'll begin the process of filling it up. So we'll first flush out a little bit out of our pump here. And the capacity on this is going to be 0.79. quarts. But again, you're just going to wait until you start seeing it come out of the top here is when you're going to know when you have it filled up. Okay, we're starting to see a slow trickle there. So we confirm we have enough in there. So we'll go ahead and clean that up and we'll put our fill plug back on there. Then we'll tighten that up to 29 foot-pounds as well. Alright, so there's the 29. Just verify you have no leaks here, then you're done with the rear axle. So then we'll move on over here to the differential clutch. And over here on the differential clutch, so up here is going to be your fill. Down there is going to be your drain. It's just going to be that 5mm hex. So we'll first loosen up this, and then we'll go down there and we'll drain our oil out of the bottom. And we'll just let that drain for a couple minutes here as well. If you notice, as I'm loosening this fill up here, it's slowly letting more of that come out. So just make sure you don't rush this step and just give it a couple of minutes for all of it to drain out of there. And there's really not that much fluid in there. I think it's 0.37 quart. So just give it a couple of minutes here and let it drain out. Then we'll install the plugs back on there. Once we get a decent amount of it to come out of there, we'll go ahead and we'll remove this fill plug all the way over here. And then once that's done draining, clean that off. You can install your plug back on there. And again, I do have a new one here. Just make sure if you're reusing the old one that you clean that up, especially that seal that's on the end. Then you're going to tighten this up to 106 inch-pounds. And make sure you do inch-pounds. It's not foot-pounds here. This is a very small bolt here. Alright, so there's the 106 inch-pounds. To get the differential clutch fluid filled, your pump, depending on which one you got, it may not fit on the end of this. So we'll get this opened up here. And you're going to notice on some of the quarts, on the gear oil quarts, you have a couple different slots where it'll actually tighten down. You're going to notice here, there's nothing on this one that's going to fit on there, which is okay. What you're going to have to do is just kind of gently hold it like this. Obviously, don't tip it over and spill it. And you're just going to have to hold it, and it still will pump as long as you leave this underneath here inside of that fluid. So just pay attention to that you're not tilting this one way or the other, you're not spilling it. Then we'll go back under the vehicle and we'll get it filled up. One thing I did do here is I did install this other piece that came with my pump because this hose was just slightly too big to fit in that hole. So you might need to pay attention to that as well. But then once it fits in there, then we'll begin the process of pumping this fluid inside. And we're going to go slow here to let this get in there properly. And again, as I mentioned there before, there's hardly nothing that goes in this. It's 0.37 quart. So you're not going to use all of this. So just kind of go slowly here and we'll begin the process of pumping it in. Okay, we can definitely see that it's starting to come out there, so we know we have the right amount in there. So we'll go ahead and we'll clean that up, and we'll go ahead and install that fill plug. Then we'll torque this to 106 inch-pounds. Alright, so there's the 106. And we'll do one final cleanup down here. Just verify we don't have any leaks. And after you get that cleaned up, you don't have any leaks, then you completed your job here. Alright, well hopefully this video helped you out if you're curious on how to service the transfer case and the rear differential in this 2018 Buick Enclave. And as I mentioned there before, this is the exact same process on the Chevy Traverse. Really the biggest thing I'll stress is one, make sure the vehicle is level so you're putting the right amount of fluid in there. As you can see back here, I have some boards underneath this Enclave where it's raised up level. And also make sure you use the right fluid. If you do both of those two things, it's really impossible to mess this job up. So hopefully this video helped you out. If it did, please give me the thumbs up. If you're interested in more content like this, please hit that subscribe. But again, I hope this helped you out and thanks for watching.